بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Today we will be continuing our grammar lessons and we will be covering the topic modal verbs. So the topic of today is called modal verbs. Modal verbs. What exactly are modal verbs? Modal verbs are a type of verb, but they're only used in specific situations. So modal verbs, they are a type of verb, but they're only used in specific situations.
cashirkeena maanta waxa uu ku saabsan yahay modal verbs. Modal verbs waxa weeyaan qayb ka mid ah verbska kaasoo isticmaalayso xaalado gaar ah.
So what are those situations that they are used in? In what situation are you going to use a modal verb? You will use a modal verb when you want to talk about ability. So when you want to talk about being able to do something, ability, you will use a modal verb. You will use a modal verb when you want to talk about possibility. Can something happen? Is it possible? You will use a modal verb. A modal verb you will use when you want to talk about obligation, so something that you have to do. A modal verb can also be used when you want to talk about prohibition, so something that you're not allowed to do. A modal verb can also be used to make requests or offers. So you want to offer to do something, you want to ask somebody something, to request something from someone. You will use a modal verb. You will also use a modal verb when you want to ask for permission. And when you want to give advice. So all of these are situations in which you will use a modal verb.
Modal verbs waxa loo isticmaalaa xaaladahan hoos ku xusan. Tusaale ahaan, ability, awood ama karti. Possibility, suurtagalnimo. Obligation, wax waajibaad ah. Prohibition, oo ah wax mamnuuc ah. To make offer or request, inaad soo bandhigatid codsi ama dalab.
When you talk about ability, when you talk about possibility, when you talk about obligation, when you talk about prohibition, when you talk about making requests or offers, when you talk about permission, and when you want to give advice. So in today's class, we will go over the different types of modal verbs in the English language. The different types of modal verbs in the English language. The first verb or the first modal verb that we will talk about is the word can. The first modal verb that we will talk about is the word can.
Maanta waxaynu qaadanaynaa 12 modal verbs. Modal verbska oo aynu faahfaahinayno xaaladaha kala duwan ee loo isticmaalo. Modal verbkeena koowaad waa kelmadda can.
So in what situations will you use the word can? You will use the word can in 5 different situations. So the word can be used in 5 different situations. What are those situations? The first situation is when you want to talk about ability. So we said modal verbs, sometimes it will be used when you want to talk about ability. So the word can, when you want to talk about ability, you will use the modal verb can. Example, I can drive a car. So you have the ability, you know how to. I can drive a car.
xaaladda koowaad aynu isticmaalayno kelmadda can waxa weeyaan marka aynu ka hadlayno ability oo ah karti ama awood. Tusaale ahaan, I can drive a car. Waan awoodaa in aan kaxeeyo gaadhi.
Another situation, we said there's 5 situations in which you will use the word can. The second situation is when you want to talk about permission. An example, you want to ask somebody, can I go now? Can I go out now? You're asking for permission. Can I go now?
xaaladda labaad aynu isticmaalayno kelmadda can waa marka aynu ka hadlayno permission oo ah ogolaansho. Tusaale ahaan, can I go now? Ma tegi karaa iminka?
So we talked about so far 2 different situations. We said you will use can when you want to talk about ability. So I can drive a car. You're able to. Again, when you want to talk about permission, can I go out now? Can I go now? You're asking for permission. Another situation in which you will use the modal verb can is when you want to talk about possibility. When you want to talk about possibility. For example, it can be a very good day tomorrow. It can be a very good day tomorrow. It's a possibility. It can be very good or it can be very bad. We don't know for certain. So when you want to talk about possibility, you will use the word can.
xaaladda saddexaad aynu isticmaalayna can waxa weeyaan marka aynu ka hadlayno possibility oo ah suurtagalnimo. Tusaale ahaan, it can be a very good day tomorrow. Laga yaabaa beritoole inay noqoto maalin wanaagsan.
Another situation is when you want to make an offer. So if you want to say, for example, I can help you with this homework. You're offering, I can help you with this homework. Don't worry. I can help you with this homework. Don't worry. It's an offer. You're offering to help somebody with their homework. So another situation where you will use the word or the modal verb can is when you want to make an offer.
xaaladda afraad ee aad isticmaalayso kelmadda can waa marka aad ka hadlaysid offer oo ah bandhig. Tusaale ahaan, I can help you with your homework. Waan kaa caawin karaa shaqadaada.
And the last situation, which is the 5th time in which you will use the modal verb can, is when you want to make a request. When you want to make a request. So for example, you say, can you please pass me the salt? Can you please pass me the salt? You're making a request. You're asking somebody, can you please pass me the salt? Can you please pass me the salt? So this is a request.
xaaladda shanaad ee ugu dambaysa ee aanu u isticmaalaysaa modal verbka can waxa weeyaan marka aad ka hadlaysid request oo ah codsi. Tusaale ahaan, can you pass me the salt please? Ma ii soo dhiibi kartaa milixda?
We said a modal verb can be used in all of these situations. And so far the word can, we mentioned 5 situations in which we can use it. The first situation is when we talk about ability. Second, permission. Number 3, possibility. Number 4, offer. And number 5, request.
hadda waxaynu dhammaynay modal verbka can iyo 5 xaaladood ee kala duwan ee loo isticmaalayo ability, awoodii, permission, ogolaanshihii, possibility, suurtagalnimadii, offerkii, dalabkii iyo requestigii, codsigii.
The second modal verb that we will go over today is the word could. So the word could, again, can be used in 5 different situations, just like the word can. The word could can be used for ability, but only in the past tense. For example, you say, I could drive a car well when I was 20 years old. So you're saying I could drive a car well when I was 20 years old. You're talking about ability, but you're talking about something that happened in the past.
Modal verbkeena labaad waa kelmadda could kaasood u isticmaalaysid 5 xaaladood oo kala duwan. Xaaladda koowaad waxa weeyaan ability in the past adiga oo ka hadlaya awood ama karti kaasood qaban karisay waqti tagay. Tusaale ahaan, I could drive car well when I was 20. Gaariga waxaan u kaxayn jiray si fiican markaan ahaa 20-yada.
Another situation you will use the word could as a modal verb is when you want to ask for permission, but you want to ask for permission in a polite way, in a nice way. For example, you say, "Excuse me, could I come in?" Excuse me, could I come in?
xaaladda labaad aynu isticmaalayno modal verbka could waxa weeyaan marka aynu ka hadlayno polite permission oo ah ogolaansho edeb leh. Tusaale ahaan, excuse me, could I come in? Iga raali noqo, ma soo socon karaa fadlan?
Another situation in which you will use could is when you want to talk about possibility. So you say, for example, a hailstorm could come tomorrow. A hailstorm could come here tomorrow. So you're talking about a storm, the weather, which will happen the next day. Nobody knows for sure. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows for sure. So you use the word could and you're talking about possibility. It could rain, it could not rain. There could be a storm, there could not be a storm.
xaaladda saddexaad aynu isticmaalayno modal verbka could waxa weeyaan marka aynu ka hadlayno possibility oo ah suurtagalnimo. Tusaale ahaan, a hailstorm could come here tomorrow. Duufaan ayaa dhici karta beritoole.
Another situation where you will use the word could is when you want to make an offer. So you want to offer something, but you want to do it in a nice way, in a polite way. So for example, you say to somebody, "No problem, I could give you a lift. I could give you a lift. I could give you a lift. I can drive you somewhere." You're offering something to somebody, and you're offering it in a nice way, in a polite way.
xaaladda afraad ee u isticmaalaysa modal verbka could waxa weeyaan marka aad ka hadlaysid polite offer oo ah bandhig edeb leh. Tusaale ahaan, "No problem, I could give you a lift. Dib ma laha, waan ku sii qaadi karaa."
And the last situation in which you will use the word could is when you want to make a polite request. So you want to ask something in a polite way. So for example, you say, "Could you please move to the next slide?" Could you please move to the next slide? You're asking something in a nice way. You're making a polite request.
xaaladda shanaad ee ugu dambeysa ee aad u isticmaalaysa modal verbka could waxa weeyaan marka aad ka hadlaysid polite request codsi edeb leh. Tusaale ahaan, "Please, could you move to the next seat?" Fadlan ma u yara banayn kartaa?
The next modal verb in which we will talk about is the word may. The word may is only used in 2 situations. What are the 2 situations? The first situation is when you want to talk about permission. So for example, you say, "May I leave early today?" May I leave early? You're asking for permission.
Modal verbkeena saddexaad waa may. May waxa aad u isticmaalaysaa 2 xaaladood oo quraata. Kow, marka aad qaadanaysid permission. Tusaale ahaan, "May I leave early today?" Hore ma u bixi karaa maanta?
And the second situation is when you want to talk about possibility. So you say, "Astronauts may travel to other planets." Astronauts may travel to other planets.
xaaladda labaad ee u isticmaalaysa may waxa weeyaan marka aad ka hadlaysid possibility suurtagalnimo. Tusaale ahaan, "I might travel tomorrow." Laga yaabo inaan berri safro.
This concludes the lesson portion of this class. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.